Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Mr. Shawn Francis. I am Brian Altunian. And as we get ready to celebrate Father's Day in 2024, we have a couple of special guests, fathers, dads of kiddos with special needs issues and serving the special needs community, and just all around decent guys who we celebrate together in our men's group called The Den. We're gonna have a great lively conversation today about caring for our family members. Special Father's Day edition of Just Two Dads. Hang in there. Hey everyone, it's Brian Altunian. I'm here along with Shawn Francis and a couple of our very special guests today. Before we get into it with them, just want to thank you if you're catching us on Facebook. Please leave us comments. We'll throw some up on the screen. If you're catching us on our YouTube channel after the fact or on our new website, justtwodadspodcast.com, you can again leave us a note, leave us a message. If you want to email us at wearejusttwodads@gmail.com. Appreciate all the comments that we get. We often get our guests and suggestions for new guests for the show by our email and other contact information. So please leave your name. Let us know what you think. If you've got questions, and if you're listening to us on either podcast outlets or WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you for making us part of your listening day. I want to thank our producer Sean Hall, who's out in Hawaii, enjoying the beauty of Hawaii while we toil away here on the mainland. And as always, Billy Footwear for being just an awesome supporter of what we do here on the show. So we put a link up on the show notes that if you go to Billy Footwear, first of all, you want to see the story about Billy Price, the founder. It's a fascinating story and how he came to found Billy Footwear, and they're amazing. It's adaptive footwear for shoes. And if you click on the link, you'll get an additional 10% off on your purchase. So thank you for Billy Footwear. And I think I've thanked everybody, so we can get launched right into this conversation around dads and our dad support group called The Den. We'll talk about that a little bit. So as we get into that, we'll throw it over to Shawn Francis. How are you, Shawn?
I'm doing good. Let's go. No, just kidding.
Normal MO.
No, I am doing well, and I'm only half kidding about the let's go part because, Brian and I got together working in financial services. There's some guys in the firm that started a men's group, and my first thought was men's group. That means you're gonna have a bunch of guys sitting around a campfire, seeing who can push out a beard and grow it the fastest, who got the biggest kill, and that ain't me. Mm-hmm. But after about 2 years being in that group or running a smaller group because we had subgroups and everything, there were things that I got from that. And I just thought, if having a safe place to express yourself emotionally as a man, which belies what society says, which is that you should suck it all up and not even raise your hand if you say I'm uncertain or I'm afraid, and you don't adhere to the belief that I have, which is that tears are important as muscles. That's probably twice as important to somebody who's caring for or a member of the special needs community. So thus The Den was born. I had the idea. Brian came up with the name. And, for today's show coming up on Father's Day, we invited a handful of the guys from the group. Only 2 of them stepped forth, but that's again why the group was created, because it's like, if you show up, you do. If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay. We're here. We're creating the space for you. And our guest today, one of them is my cousin, and my first introduction to what it meant to be a father to a child with autism, because I saw autistic behavior in his son, my little cousin, at a time when none of us, including him and his wife, we didn't even know that that's what it was. Mm-hmm. And he contributes so much to the Den with each of our calls. And that is Maurice McDavid. Welcome, Maurice.
Glad to be here. Excited for the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, great to have you.
And then our other friend of the show and member of the group recently joined, who will be on with his wife in a future episode, is a gentleman that has no children on the spectrum or with any kind of diagnosis, is not a caregiver for an elderly family member or anything like that, but it is literally his and his wife's business to provide therapy. So they have a business that provides ABA, and he's a wonderful spouse and father as well. Welcome, Shawn Ranel.
Hey guys, how you doing? Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, great to have you here as well. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such great to have such different perspectives because, having, somebody who serves the community and obviously members of the community, it's such a two different facets into our universe. So it's great to have you both here. And I think this would be a really good conversation.
For sure.
Really,
and thank you guys for having this platform in general as well. Though this is definitely something that's needed. So I appreciate you guys, even setting this up. It's amazing.
Thanks.
Thank you. That means a lot. I think that, things happen for a reason. I've had a lot of synergy and conversations either with other dads or people that appreciate what we do or what we're about, and just the idea of redefining men, and I'm going to try not to go all over the place, which is very hard for me to do. But
see how it goes.
we did an episode, especially with graduation upon us. I think it may be 2 weeks ago, we were just honoring teachers and special needs teachers. And we were trying to figure out why teaching is such a underpaid institution. And in doing research for the episode, I found out that the reason teachers are underpaid is because of what was once the feminization of the institution of teaching. And so to that end, it makes me stop and think of the way that we separate people. You're this gender, so this is what you're supposed to do. Here's what you're supposed to do. And as opposed to us getting past those things and finding out what keeps us, together and unites us and keeps us in common. And what happens is, because men have been ruling things for so long, you think that it's women only that are hurt by the labels and the isms and schisms and things that they're supposed to do or not do. But we get put in a box also. The problem is we're probably the ones that, and I have done research on this, but I think we're the ones that put ourselves in the box, because here's what you're supposed to do. Of course, as men, we're the product of, the boys that we were, as we were raised as boys, but we're more than likely responsible for the box that we put ourselves in. So, and you guys are both examples of people stepping outside of that. So it makes me appreciate you being here today even more.
For sure. No, and that's very insightful. I was just thinking about that this morning, and how, society puts us in this kind of box and says, hey, you're the man, you are supposed to be the provider, for example. And, historically, that's been our number one role, is to be the leader, the provider. And kind of what's kind of fallen by the wayside with that is also physically being there for the kids that you have. And so that's something that I was just kind of thinking about as I was getting up this morning, being more present with the kids, and how important that is as dads, because growing up, all I heard was, hey, provide. And that's very good. You're supposed to do that. But the other side of that is, also physically being there. So
yeah, that's part of providing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think, again, it's often where we put our focus and our attention. I was of the same belief in when I was first married, and, providing, and that was I was focused on my job and my career and everything. And then when my daughter was diagnosed with, with microcephaly and some developmental disabilities, it was a noticeable, and it wasn't really conscious, but I was conscious of the shift. It wasn't a conscious shift, but I remember thinking I was focusing actually more. By the way, we had a second child by that time when she was first diagnosed. And I remember thinking, I'm really paying attention now to her developmental cycle, which I don't think I was paying attention at all prior to that. I was just there. I was being there, and supportive husband and supportive dad, but I wasn't as focused on her specific developmental issues. And then I could focus on my second daughter's issues as well, because I had an awareness. So I think you're right. So focus on serving and supporting that we not really being fully present to that moment. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to, as challenging as it was, I'm grateful to have had the diagnosis, because it allowed me to then focus my efforts where they should have been focused.
Sure. It creates a bond. Yep. Those experiences.
It's funny for me. It's a little bit different. Yes, provider, and I could spend all kinds of time talking the damage that caused me to go crazy on that side of things. But
Hmm.
um, uh, uh, the choice I made to be really involved with my kids was kind of really more out of my hurt because my dad was there but not really there. My dad worked multiple jobs, but he was gone. Do you know what I mean? So he provided for us, financially, but not really emotionally, and that caused a scar in me. So that when we started having children, I have 5 children. I used to say this thing, other than breastfeeding, there's my kids are going to know I'll do anything for them that their mother will do for them. And that
Hmm.
was and my autistic son was my last child. So that was a commitment I made kind of out of my hurt. I'm going to do the
Hmm.
opposite. And I'm glad. I mean, God can take good and bad things and make beautiful things out of them. And I kind of feel like that was, and I love my dad now. We have a great relationship now. So don't, he's a great guy. He was just young and working hard, you know what I mean, trying to provide for his family because that's what he knew. So I don't fault
Yeah.
him at all. But that hurt drove me to be, kind of insanely involved with my kids. I even made career choices to make sure I could either work from home or kind of be out in the field and come home. So I've been a helicopter dad in a lot of ways. So I don't know if
Yeah.
Well,
my
well,
kids
think
might say
about
that's
it.
bad. My kids might say that's bad, but
Right. Well, think about it though. Who teaches anything about make sure you have a certain amount of emotional availability?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
not really taught to boys or girls. Do
Not
you
at
know
all.
what kind of I saw an article, didn't even get to read it, and it was referring to girls, but I think it applies to anyone. It said, here are 10 things that children that don't feel loved by a parent carry as baggage. And
Hmm.
if you think about, someone whose parent is not present, whether the absence is just because the love language is to provide and work, which is not a bad thing, it's just a limiting language,
Hmm.
or the one that is complete like absence, an estranged parent or something like that.
Hmm.
The world is who pays for those types of things when children who don't feel loved grow up, because you have to hope that we're lucky. Like in your case, Maurice, you decided that you're going to be the opposite, but it's the opposite of just being physically present. It's not some really horrible bad thing,
Hmm.
And then you have people that really do have horrible bad things where the parent is either estranged or there's physical or maybe even sexual abuse, and the way that they turn their worry into that of a warrior is to say, I'm going to make sure I give the opposite to my children, give the opposite to the world. But not everybody's equipped to do that. So,
Hmm.
what we do and what we give is so, 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 so important. And then if you add a diagnosis to that, well,
Yeah.
then your armor better be 5 miles thick.
For sure. For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just a quick story, piggybacking off what you had said, Maurice. I was the same way with. So I have an older daughter that I had when I was in college. So she's grown out of the house now. And then the next one that I had with my wife, who you guys will end up meeting on a future episode. Um, I was determined to kind of do it differently, kind of like Maurice had said. And so, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do everything that she can do. And so when you set the limitation as far as breastfeeding, I took it a step further. I was like, oh, no, 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 no. That's not going to be the limitation. because,
okay.
because
Wait, you got to tell me how you did that. I want to know.
Yeah,
we're about to get to that. We're going to get to that. because I read that, the breastfeeding with the mom is a bonding experience, right? And so I'm like,
right.
well, I want that same experience. And so I didn't go as far as, putting on breasts or anything like that. There's none of that. But when we were at the hospital before we left, they told me how to stimulate it. And so they gave me this bottle that had a little tube on it. And so I would hold the tube next to my finger and put that in her mouth. And that would simulate breastfeeding, is her sucking on my finger with the little tube with the milk coming out.
Interesting.
So I was
Mm.
doing that and kind of helping. And I'm thinking, the flip side of that is I'm thinking that I'm helping, my wife and everything. And so it wasn't until recently where she kind of confessed to me. She was like, I like that you're a hands-on dad and everything, but it took a lot of
But
getting used to. Yes, because that ended up kind of stepping on her bonding experiences. And
mhm.
so I had no idea, I'm thinking I'm stepping in, I'm knocking it out of the park. And in a way that was happening, but at the same time, it came at an expense of what she was missing
Her
out on as
bonding.
well.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
it's interesting because when my wife told me the same thing about nursing, I was like, right away, I said, I think I knew what you mean. And here's what I meant by that. In September, I will be 60. Okay.
Okay.
And in all my years of life, I have never, ever had as peaceful a sleep as I did on the couch with my son this big as a newborn on my chest. It's just a different kind of sleep. I'd wake up going, what is that? Can I put that in a bottle and have it for the rest of my life?
Yep.
And now that I'm saying this out loud, because and again, and Brian knows this, you know, I always talk about raise your consciousness, think about what you're thinking about, think about what you say. I'm sitting here right here as the fifth person on this panel, listening to what I just said, and like, you know what? That's where I need to go when I'm trying to sleep. Because sometimes I don't always necessarily get the best sleep. Some of that comes from, you know, my son's autism. Some of it comes from me having been a night owl all my life. Right. But as I put on my meditation, I try to go someplace to sleep. I've never thought about that. That's probably a good place for me to try to revisit, because it was just unexplainable. You talk about waking up like literally reborn. Like I think my name is probably different because I'm not the same dude that I was when I fell asleep.
Yeah, I think Elijah's probably too big to recreate that entire thing, but we kind of get the idea. Get the concept.
Don't think I have. I've tried though, because sometimes he'll come over and you know what? Even though it's not the same, there is sort of a okay, but he'll do that, and we fall asleep. It'll be like. That was cute. I need to roll this way. You need to go.
Yep.
We both do that. Yeah. The nap changes.
I remember when Jordan was a baby, and she didn't sleep very well in the very beginning, and she had colic. And I remember I was on a night shift to handle her colic, and I remember walking around the house, and I was working hard, and I was actually angry that I had to like handle this in the middle of the night, and then I thought to myself, who am I angry at? Like, who am I mad at for doing this? Like, this is an opportunity for me to do something. And definitely not her fault. She's, tiny. And I remember sitting in a recliner and putting her on my chest and having that exact same experience, Sean. It was the most peaceful, grounded sleep I've had, man. That is the greatest experience. It's very true.
It is. It is.
Really is.
And then they grow up and start sleeping wildly and kicking you in the side and
yeah, right. It's like, is that intentional? If like you did like what the like what's going on?
For sure.
That's all right. Mine's gonna be 20. How old is she gonna be? 29 this year, and she calls me every day still. So I credit the colicky nights for that.
Nice.
That helps. That definitely helps. That helps. Wow. What do you guys have? Because we're a couple of days away. What do you guys have planned for Father's Day, and how do you, or have you at all thought about your Father's Day experience as a father versus Father's Day as a kid? And as I say that, I remember Eddie Murphy, when he first, blew up. I don't think it was Delirious or something like that. He was talking about the idea that, what dads get for Father's Day is like a big fat out of style tie and some, and some cologne that nobody would wear. What do you guys have planned, and what are your thoughts about Father's Day as a father versus a son?
You want to go first, Maurice, or I can
Sure. I guess I think about myself as a father before I think about my dad, to be honest, because I'm a self-centered guy. What can I say? So, and I don't really have any expectations for Father's Day. All my kids are in their, I love it when for a few months they're all 2 years apart. So 22, 24, 26, 28, and 30. So super easy for me to remember, right? And at this point in time, some are out of the house, some are in the house. Obviously, my youngest with autism is in the house. And I don't really have much in the way of expectations, except for I did let them know there's a cool pair of shades that I wouldn't spend the money on. But if they want to get it as a gift, I'll take it. because I'm cheap that way. But if they want to get it for me, that works.
Right.
I don't really have any plans. I have told so many people over the last 4 or 5 years that there's really nothing I need. I'm blessed. I've been married this year 35 years. There's no black sheep in my family. We're all very connected. There's no when my kids were little, they'd have X's on one another. If one sibling was mad at another, they'd say, "I've got an X on them." And so there was stuff going on, and there's no X's going on amongst all the siblings right now. So I don't really know what else I could ask for. If we hang out and have a nice meal together, that would be an amazing Father's Day for me. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'll call my dad. My dad is fairly down the path of dementia. Still, he's super sweet, but we'll have a conversation, and then 5 minutes from now, he won't know that I called him, and I can call him again, and we can enjoy that conversation all.
But he remembers you though.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. He's not that far gone. So I'll call him and wish him a happy Father's Day. He's not local, so that's kind of the best I can do. And I enjoy the conversation. He always asks about his grandkids and how they're doing, and he always says, "Well, they're not kids anymore, are they?" And I'm like, "No, they're not kids anymore." It's just something he always says. So that's my place.
Nice. That's sweet.
Nice. And for me, I really don't have any plans. I know that they'll do something. As I mentioned, I have a older daughter, so she's out of the house and on her own. The little one's here in the house. We have our 15, 12, 10, and 6. So I know Mom will, have them do something. The little ones like to, be creative and make cards and stuff. And so they'll probably make, something out of construction paper and stuff. It'll be really cute. I keep all of that stuff in a little box.
There you go.
I'm one of those crying dads, so I'll tear up over that kind of stuff later on. I keep it in a box and stuff like that. So no, I really don't have any expectations other than, I'm a night owl like you, Shawn. And so I don't usually go to bed until 1 or so. So my only expectation is to not wake me up before 10. That's it.
Wait a minute, I'm getting a theme here. I think Shawn's trying to outdo me. Wait, I did everything but breastfeed, but he breastfed.
Right.
I got 5 kids and he's got 6 kids. Did I hear that right?
I was thinking
that. I'm like, he's one-upping me all over the place. I'm not digging it.
Yeah. How you sit on the camera is a little higher than you as well. So
I noticed that.
Yeah, raise a chair.
Right from the beginning, set it up.
Maurice,
we can fix that.
Maurice, listen. If you want me to give you some, I will. I'll give you a couple of them. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But how I view Father's Day now, as opposed to when I was a kid, looking back, I really don't remember a bunch of Father's Days. Actually, I can't think of one. Actually,
same here.
And
I feel bad about that.
Yeah, and that's not a slight on my mom or anything. Everybody was growing up how they grew up, and our parents were doing just the best that they could. So I just don't remember us doing a bunch of stuff for Father's Day. I do remember Mother's Day, but I don't remember Father's Day.
Isn't that weird? Because I clearly remember Mother's Day. It's like I don't remember a single Father's Day. As a kid, I remember Father's Day. As an adult, I remember, and maybe that just means that your appreciation is deeper. I remember even things that I would give my dad, like as an adult, after having children of my own. But as a kid, whatever. I can't even think of stuff I made in school.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
It goes to the idea that moms do stuff all throughout the year, and oftentimes we don't express our appreciation. And so at least on the one day, the appreciation's there, and they feel appreciated, feel like the focus is on her and she does her thing. And we all love that. And dads are like, whatever, I don't need it. I don't need the appreciation. I get it. Right. Cause it's such a different setup. So there's like a different expectation, I think, on the, on the dad side. For the same thing, I think we did Dad's Day, but I don't think we really did much for Father's Day except hung out. We could probably, got together for a barbecue and, all hung out, came over the house and hang out, most likely watching the, NBA finals or, some sports thing on TV and just hanging out for the day. It wasn't as big of a deal as we made for Mother's Day for sure. So and I think that's because moms really appreciated the extra attention and dads were like, whatever,
Yeah.
Well, and I also think that to that point, a lot of that is generational because I know a lot of dads now that are not like that, but they're also my age. And so but those dads also put a lot into doing something on Mother's Day. And so I know that they feel like, okay, if, this is like a reciprocal kind of thing because, and I do this in our house, I make sure that, the boys get something for the girls and the girls get something for the boys and that kind of thing for Valentine's Day. Because I want them both to see what their roles should be in when they get into certain relationships, I guess. And so the best place for them to see that is for us to show them that by example at home so that they're not going out and seeing it from their friends or from somebody else's, household that you may not approve of. So I definitely think a lot of that is generational. Especially with nowadays, it's more accepting for us to talk about what we want to talk about our feelings or our love language or whatever. And so I think there's more guys who are saying, hey, this is Father's Day. This is what I want, or just being more vocal about it, basically, and it being more acceptable versus back then. I think society would have looked at our dads like, what are you talking about? Go provide. That's your job. Go provide.
Yeah,
Leave us
go
alone.
buy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as far as Father's Day for me, like my main thing is I would just like everybody to be together. If I could have a nice meal with everyone, that'd be great. And I prefer doing it at home as opposed to a restaurant.
For
And
sure.
I was due and kind of wanted like a new phone because I'm bad on space or whatever. I went and got it. So it's like I don't know that you're gonna so what I really would like is there's things that I would like, but I plan to get them. I can't think
Exactly.
of you know what I mean? I just I don't know because and here's the thing, because if on what I would do on Father's Day, though, this is kind of maybe sort of weird, is I would look to see how they express or connect with me. And if there's anything that's missing and it seems like I'm taken for granted, the first thing I do is look in the mirror, or what I would do leading up to the day is, this is probably like the last 5, 6, 7 years. I'm like, what kind of father have I been for the last 12 months? Have I been the type of dad where I'd be like, I just so appreciate you. Do I give somebody a reason to say that? You know what I mean? And I constantly ask myself that, because all I can tell you is that I try to be the best father I can. When someone from outside says something positive or complimentary about me as a father, it takes a minute to absorb it, because not that it makes me uncomfortable or that I brush it off. It has to literally like soak in like a sponge for me to go, oh, okay, I guess I'm maybe I'm doing okay. Because I feel like I'm never sure. I'm just focused on
for sure
the trying part, and I think that as much as people see me post and talk about our time being indefinite and acknowledging what my father tried to tell me as a kid, I used to say that, he would tell me, we're not going to be here forever. Every day you're closer to dying. I'd be like, dude, I'm trying to watch Scooby-Doo. That's really heavy right now.
Right.
Because he's been telling me since I was that young.
Yeah.
But it's so valuable. Right. And so when I think of those kind of things, that's why I'm always like, how can I get better? Am I doing the best thing I possibly can? And so I don't know.
For sure. It's hard to, when you don't have that constant validation, you're questioning if you're doing the right thing and how you're doing. I get it. All that means is that you care, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I appreciate that. And then what I try to do is, I'll catch myself doing the same thing with my wife, because what she does from a giving standpoint, as a wife, as a mom, and then just as a person, is just, there's no thought to it. She's thoughtful, but it's so innate. You know what I mean? She's just,
it's natural.
Here, let me give and add to others. I can catch myself and be like, wait a minute, I need to let her know that what she's given there is like that it's appreciated and that it matters.
For sure.
Because you can't look for it and then not give it.
Right. Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not giving it, sometimes you wouldn't know how to look for it. Right. So
yeah, right.
You want
That's true too.
You generally want to give it.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys. Again, like I said, I think for us, for Father's Day, we would just appreciate being, hanging out with kids and having a meal at home. I think we're cool with that. It's just, having the moment to, to reflect. Unfortunately, I have my oldest is on the other side of the country, and then my middle daughter is halfway around the world. So I don't get a chance to hang out with them this weekend. But I'm hoping for my little guy. My little guy is going to be 17. So 17, by the way, as you all know, if you've got 17-year-olds or have had 17-year-old date, if he even says hello, I'm all right.
Yeah. Do you even exist at that age?
Yep.
Like,
Other than as a wallet, right?
Can I have the keys in the car? Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
But I am hoping
wallet in the car.
Car keys and cash. That's what you're known
Yeah.
for.
100%. It used to be a stereotype, but that is the absolute truth. Yeah, I literally expect them to walk in the door at any minute. After having my car for the last day or two. But I am hoping that we we'll probably taking a Dodger game this Sunday. That's a fun thing. We've done that for a long time, gone to baseball games together, and so that's our thing. I'm kind of hoping that we can put that together. So that's what I think we're going to do Father's Day this year.
Let me ask you guys something from a general standpoint and a father's one as well. And it might seem like a weird question. I don't know. But then again, me and weird questions go hand in hand, right, Brian? But I've been working with this on this campaign with this company, which you guys will hear about. And it revolves around fathers and fatherhood and time with our children. And working on it from the marketing standpoint had me pose the question, which is, how many summers do you think we need to live before we realize how precious they are or how precious we are? And I say that as a person who lived most of their life as though I know the promoter up in heaven and I'm on the guest list and I can go whenever I want and the club doesn't close. Yeah, I'm going to be good. And it's not a conscious thought. It's just like, yeah. So the appreciation I have for my dad's scary words about death when I was scared crapless about death, made it difficult to get that. But what do you think that answer is, like, say, for you? Because we were talking about, fathers, and Brian, your relationship, as a family friend, knowing the great Jerry West, and that relationship comes from your dad. As he passed this morning, I got to thinking, like, okay, he was 86? You're still thinking, though, at the same time when somebody departs, is like, what if this is all like there is? What if we've come up with the notion of going someplace else to soothe ourselves, for those of us that might have limited faith or whatever have you?
Right.
As usual, that's a compound question and statement, but those are the things that are in my mind that I've served to confuse you further, but respond to that as you wish.
I'll say, how many summers? I like summer.
Right.
Right.
Go ahead, Sean. Sean, S-E-A-N. Go ahead. I just want to crack a joke.
So you're asking how many summers we think it would take for us to appreciate our kids?
Everything, like the our fragility and our mortality, I guess, because I know I was at least 30, 40 summers in before you get to really embrace the idea that you're going to die one day, and as such, do a damn good job of living, not just being alive. Before it was like death. Wait a minute, hold on, because like, for instance, Brian and I work in financial services and life insurance. My wife and I first started dating. I wasn't in that industry. It's like, life insurance is important. Like, yeah, I know it is. Yeah. What time are the Lakers on? Don't talk to me about checking out.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's inevitable, and it creates a better quality. So I'm talking at least 30, 40 for myself.
Yeah, and so I was going to say the same thing. I would probably say early to mid 30s. I had never I didn't go to my first funeral until I was probably 22. And so I had never really come face to face with it. And that was on purpose. There are chances for me to go to funerals. I just avoided them at all costs. That's how scared I was of it. And so when I went to my first funeral, it still scared me. It was just right there in my face. And so it wasn't until I got into my early 30s to mid 30s, and I had some maturity, and I realized, that that's something you cannot control. And that, for me, that's kind of what it came down to was, okay, I know that this is going to happen, but when is this going to happen? Is it going to hurt? All these, I had all these questions. And so once I realize that there's really no control over it. It's just something that you have to accept. And then to your point, you just want to live your life the best way, so that whenever that time does come, more people are talking positively about you and your deeds and stuff. Um, I have the first tattoo I have right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a sword, and it says the word deeds in Greek. And so I like Greek mythology, and one of the sayings is deeds are immortal, not the flesh. And so that's kind of what this tattoo means to me is, all of the deeds and stuff that I do, that stuff will live on past, my flesh. And that's kind of how I try to live my life.
Interesting.
That's
Yeah.
that's fantastic. The group that we're talking about, a men's group that precipitated the one that we had. The name of the group that I ran was called they had these different names. I called it Team ISO, and the whole idea was that ISO stood for In Search of Eternity.
Mhm.
How do we find eternity? Well, you hope you find it when you depart the planet, but the way
Right.
that you find it for certain is by what you do while you're alive and what you leave behind.
For sure.
I think that key, that age that you're talking about, sometimes I think it's when we have an awareness and a realization that we have more years behind us than we do in front of us. Like that's when we're like, right? Because on the uphill battle, like you've got like your job and raising a family and career path and goals, and that's uphill. And at some point, you like start to enjoy that stuff, and that stuff becomes a little bit less important because you achieve that that uphill thing, and now you're on that downhill slide. Once you realize that you're on that slide, and by the way, some people I think don't ever get to that until they're literally close to the end. Some people are taken way too early, and we always think about that. Like, man, I was like 32 years old, and they were whole life ahead of them. And I think that that's the thing, right? When you're young, we always tell people like, you got your whole life ahead of you to experience all this, right? And at some point, you're like,
you got time, but no, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah, no, you don't.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
Time isn't running out. Time was here before we got here. Time will
Right.
be here after last call and the club closes. Time isn't running out. We are.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And the last thing I just wanted to add to that was there's also a correlation between when I came to that realization and me being more secure in my faith and my walk with God. That was a huge, like those were hand in hand.
Sure.
So I just wanted to point that out as well.
That makes a lot of
It's
sense.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
From a faith standpoint, that's got to be difficult to kind of instill or imprint upon a young person, especially because you're just like, I can do anything, I can be anything, and tomorrow is promised for me, even though it might not be for you. You just feel like you're here forever. Maurice, I know that you're strong in your faith. What are some of your views on that and the realization that you might have come to with or the age that you were at when you came to that point?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think for many, many years I was caught up in religion more than faith, if that makes sense. Very busy in church and kind of all the things that go there. Not 100% sure that my relationship was really with God. It was more with the church.
The church.
And that structure. And I think that's changed profoundly. But that didn't really happen until my mid 40s. So I got born again at 26. I wasn't raised religiously at all. And then, my world came crashing down on me at 26. And I'm like, if there's a God, I need to know you because I'm not happy with where I am. And that was cool because then I fell into the church and I got married to my wife and had my kids. And it was really, really, really good. But in my mid 40s, I realized, it's not so much about the things I do. It's about who I am. And in that authenticity of living and giving when it's not about any reciprocity. It's just, I want to love and give out of my heart. And it really doesn't matter what you do with it. It doesn't matter if you give it back. It doesn't matter if it scores me brownie points. That's not what matters. And it's kind of the same thing with my kids now. It's like, I want to love them. And we talk about teenagers. Teenagers are not reciprocal at all.
Not at all.
No.
But that's okay because developmentally, that's where they are. You know what I mean?
Right.
and I don't think really until maybe 10 years ago, I got out of the space of needing to be respected as dad. Not my kids don't curse at me; they're not disrespectful, but there would be these things in my mind like, you need to respect me, and I would do stupid, typical dad anger things out of that space. And I don't think I finally realized that till maybe 10 years ago. And it's like, so I'm still, we're all, as we all are, I'm still very evolving in all of this. I'm grateful because the more I let go of the need for reciprocity or the need for respect, or it's freed me up from putting my expectations out on my wife or my kids or my coworkers or any of that stuff. So I'm grateful for this process. The one thing I will say that does, and it was haunting me for a long time, because my son, my youngest, has autism. I have always had this fear that who's going to take, and I think any special needs parent, a foundational fear is who's going to take care of my kid when I'm gone.
Yes.
And I mean, honestly, 10 years ago, I was freaked out about that. But in the last 10 years, God has just had, people in my life show up and assure me my son will be cared for if for some reason I'm gone, or me and my wife are gone. And that's siblings, that's relatives, I mean, my son has a cousin that's his age, and he's 22, matter of fact, he's younger. He's a little bit younger, and he's like, I'll take care of Isaac if nobody else does. And that just blows my mind. So, it's a progressive walk, but what I find is the more I let go, honestly, the freer I feel. So,
Yeah.
That's
What
awesome.
about you? What about you, Brian? What about you and your discovery? I know, just knowing you as I do, and the stuff that you've shared and what your life has been like over the past 5-6 years, you've had a couple awakening moments that would, I don't know where you were at prior to that.
Yeah. What was the question again? I'm kidding.
How many summers?
I'm kidding. I think, yeah, I'm one of those kind of people that I'm present to the things that I'm doing. By the way, good and bad. I kind of feel everything, right away. I'm a big fan of the be do have concept. Who are you being more than who are you doing? I think that was, once I really embraced that was probably a dozen years ago or so. The idea of who I am is more important than what I do. What I do is a means to an end, right? It helps me get to a certain place, but really who I am in the world is more important. The appreciation for where I'm at, for where my relationships are. I have very good. It's funny. Listen, I think we all have this, kind of a give and take. I have really good relationships with a lot of people, and I have not great relationships with people who are important in my life. And always taking the good with the bad and trying to be consistent with who I am being in the world. Life comes at you, a bunch of different ways. And I think every time I go personally through some sort of transition, which I definitely have been in the last, let's just say, Shawn, like the last 5-6 years, transitioning, whether it's from relationships into relationships or whatever that looks like, that's that reminder that we really are on here for a blink of an eye, for a very short period of time. And where we go next, listen, every religion has a perception of what's beyond. For some people, it's, going home. For some people, it's going to, be called, just stand beside, Lord and Savior. Some people, it's, to be reincarnated and come back again and solve the problems that you didn't solve the first time around or the last time around, And so
right.
I think for me, I look at, I'm always exploring. I'm always fascinated in talking to people from, about their different experiences, whether it's religious or practical, and always just, evolving. I think for me, I know that it's always a set of evolutionary goals along the pathway. And I think that when we get to a certain age, we all should do those kinds of things where, for example, I'll say this, when I turned 50 and I had a little party, I put a board together of 50 things you don't know about me. and things that I had done and where I've been, and things that I don't outwardly tell people, but it's good to know kind of who I am. I think we should do that first of all, we probably should do that every year. But every milestone year, like things because what that does is it forces us to create some sort of appreciation for our pathway, right? And every time you have appreciation for where you've been, it kind of sets up for a nice transition to where you're going next, whatever that looks like, whether it's the next year, next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. So for me, I have an appreciation for, for where I'm at. I've appreciated enjoying these periods of time, the summers, as you say, Shawn, lately, and again, as our parents transition, and, the Jerry West passing today is that's our parents' generation, right? 86 years old, about the average lifespan for us that are in our ages start with 6. That's not that far away, right? 25 years from now. And so appreciation where we are, and knowing that, is there something that we can do now to make the next however set of years we've got left in front of us as rich and full and complete as we possibly can. That, again, like Shawn says, we tend to ramble. That's my whole kind of conceptual idea of where we are in all of this. If that makes sense.
It's great altogether, because as long and it makes the utmost sense. Like you feel like it's rambling, but there's nothing but value. And what it comes down to is anything is better than, and I'm not beating myself up, but anything is better than what I did. The kid who was watching Scooby-Doo and didn't want to hear about the fact that we're all going to die is like that kid, like just like a bump on a log. He's just taking up space on the planet. Just like, what are you doing? Because if you're not intentional, what are you going to do? Like when we talk about, year end, and we talk about, goal setting and all that kind of stuff, living your life on purpose. One of a mentor of ours at a course that begins with writing your eulogy. And I was thinking of that when Shawn was talking earlier about how you're remembered. Well, if you think about it, if you live your life with whatever life gives you, whatever comes, and it's just instantaneous as opposed to intentional, you're hoping that people say nice things about you. How would you exactly like to be remembered? How would you like to live? Not just, well, what do you want to achieve? What do you really want to do with your minute, with your hour, with your day? And to do nothing else is kind of, snubbing your opportunity, in the face, whether you believe in a higher power or not. But we're here right now, living and breathing, and that is a gift, no matter how you look at it.
For sure.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Brian, do you think we're a little too early for the question?
Oh no, because we have two people. I'd love to hear these. I'd love to hear their answers.
Yes. So if you guys took a closer look at the email,
I did.
Okay, good. So you didn't just see the link, because people hear the question, they go, "Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. It's deep. I love that." I'm like, well, what the hell did you just ask me? But you guys can figure out which one of you will go first. This is the portion of the show where we ask the following, with context. Our ability to change the world is dependent upon our ability or our willingness to change ourselves. With that said, give us just one example of a thought or a belief that you once really believed strongly and no longer now believe to be true.
So I'll go ahead and go first. I've been thinking about that ever since I saw your email, and there's a couple of them, but I've narrowed it down to this one, and it's not really related to anything we've talked about today, but it's related to fatherhood and parenting.
Yeah.
So growing up, we're taught that everybody should be treated the same way, right? Boys and girls should be treated the same way. And I subscribed to that until I had a daughter. And then I was like, okay, no, there's no way we can treat boys and girls from a parenting standpoint the same way, because they're not the same. And so as an adult, I've kind of changed that philosophy as far as how I apply it, to where I started applying things differently based on my daughter versus my son, as well as their age. So like my 6-year-old, for example, she gets a little more leeway than my 15-year-old, because there's a lot of things that my 15-year-old should be able to do without me having to say it, that kind of thing. But we have two 15-year-olds, one's a boy, one's a girl. And so I still parent them differently because one's a boy and one's a girl. And so the girl, for example, I wouldn't let her say take the city bus to go somewhere by herself. Whereas my son, who's 15, I would absolutely let him do that. So some people, don't agree with that and think that that's kind of maybe sexist, I guess, or misogynistic. But I just think that there's certain things that boys should be able to do later on because no one's going to really try to challenge them versus a girl, for example. And it all comes down to safety and security is what it kind of comes
Right.
down to. So that philosophy there.
Good. And I always tell people there is no wrong answer. I say if a person has no answer, then it means that they might just want to do some reflecting. And if the answer is as simple as once I believed that pepperoni was the best pizza and now I don't, that's okay. That's where you're at. It's a very personal thing. There's no wrong answer.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Maurice.
For me, when I read the question, it's very clear. For many years, I was very dogmatic in my religious posture. Okay. And I just no longer think that dogma aligns with who God says he is. I had some it was a box, and I put myself in that box, and I put everybody else that was quote unquote saved in that box too. And everybody else outside of that box, well, you need to get in the box. And I just don't hold to that anymore. And that's really impacted. Again, I said earlier, so much of my life was about performance. And I know we don't probably have time to touch on it, but growing up when I did as an African American man, I had to outperform all the people around me to get equal attention, to get equal opportunity. And that drove me really hard for a lot of years. I had to prove myself, and I had to double prove myself. And that was in my business life as well as in my church life and all of those things, because I was, anyway, all that to say, I think the word that describes God is love, and love gives without expectation of return, and love gives freely and generously and continuously without asking, you have to, in return, in exchange for this, you have to do A, B, and C. So I would say that's probably the revelationary for me, and that has set me free from a lot of things that bound me. So
that's fantastic.
Brian,
go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say for Maurice, that was actually my second one. I was picking between what I said and that right there because I'm from Louisiana, so I grew up in the South, and so Southern Baptist, that whole thing, strict. And I had to, as I got older, let go of a lot of that stuff that I grew up around and was taught as far as the structure of church, because Maurice, as you said, God is everywhere, God is love, and it doesn't mean that you're not godly or worthy of his love if you don't go to church on Sunday and then don't go to church on Wednesday for Wednesday service and then go to church on Tuesday for benediction and all of this other kind of stuff. It like you said, it freed me up as well, to not be bound by those constraints and to still seek God out, and not only seek him out, but then have him still talk to me and know that he still loves me, even though I'm not actively in a physical structured church. And so, we have church here in our household on Thursdays, and it's with the church that I went to back in Texas. So we don't physically go to a church here where we are. We still do church, virtually online. And so I still think that that's just as good, even though we're not physically going somewhere. So
we could and maybe one day we will do an entire show on on faith and prayer. And you don't believe in God, you're not looking with your eyes open, because there's so many times when situation has occurred where I've just literally gotten down on my knees and said, I just need a little bit of help. And then amazing how many times it has happened out of the blue where something's been answered. You know, it really is incredible. So listen, I grew up Jewish, a very strong Jewish faith. And I have a friend who's a psychic who told me that my ascended master is Jesus Christ. So, you know, I pray to Hashem and Jesus at the same time on a regular basis because they're related. And I'll tell you, it's miraculous to see what happens when you do that, including today, as a matter of fact. So it's all good. So by the way, at the end of the day, it is what Maurice said. I am a huge fan. In fact, that's how we generally end the show. It's a perfect segue because I always say at the end of the show, empathy and love is what makes the world go round, right? Have empathy for the people that you encounter where you don't know what they're going through, and rather than be judgmental, have some empathy, be empathetic to their situation. You have no idea what their experience is. And if you look at the world through the lenses of love, man, the world is just a better place to be. So, you know, I love having you guys on here. We could sit and talk for another couple hours, honestly.
I know, right?
And I'm glad that we have the Den, and I'm glad that we have that every other week for us to do these kinds of things and talk about stuff going on in our lives on a regular basis. And so, you know, good to have, you know, dads who are involved, whether they're by choice or not, to be involved in special needs communities, because that's really true. You know, true giving and to Maurice's point, true love. So
can I make a quick plug as a dad who goes to the Den regularly? If you're a dad with special needs kids, it is a great place to be. We laugh at the commonality of things that we thought just we were stuck in, and then we find out every dad is like, oh my God, that, you know, we were talking about taking our boys to the urinals, and boys with autism pull their pants all the way down, just so you guys know. And you find out that every other dad has experienced that thing, and you're like, oh, it's not just me. So if you're a dad with special needs, boy or girl, I just want to wholeheartedly invite you to participate in the Den. It's been amazing for me. It's a blessing for me. I'm sure every guy that shows up walks away from there feeling stronger in their ability to be the dad they need to be. So that's
we appreciate you for your contribution.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Really. Sean Francis.
Well, with that said, you know, gosh, I just want to thank everyone within the sound of my voice. I want to thank you guys for being here today. Thank you for the platform, the opportunity, and this life that I'm given. I feel like I'm saying grace before Thanksgiving dinner, but that's how I feel. And I'm just, you know, again, let's try and be a little more childlike, less childish. Let's remember that questions have so much more power than statements. And it's a work in progress. Look, I mentioned this campaign that I'm working on with this marketing company and with Parenthood. And because of the conversation that I've had with the producer that I've been working with, I've looked at, you know, Elijah had a meltdown 2 days ago. He went on the spending spree on Apple, buying all these games and everything. And we're having conversations with them like, yes, we know that it's from our account, but you know, we're trying to explain it. And so they sent my wife, got another debit card in the mail, it's shut down and everything. And as he's getting upset about it, ordinarily I would just be like, my only concern would be like, he is so loud right now and he's so upset with this meltdown. I need my peace. I need so-and-so. And while I still felt that way, my primary concern was him and how badly he felt. And I felt so, I had more empathy. Right. And I'm conscious. I say these things to close the show out that way. What I'm saying is if my consciousness is a little higher than the average person, I'd like to think it is, and yet there's more room for my empathy to grow, there's got to be room for yours. And there's no such thing as not having enough room, and we should never tire of that effort. So with that said, thank everybody. You know, feel free to check out the show notes for the registration for the Den. And to everyone within the sound of my voice, thank you. We love you. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We love and appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been great. Have a great week. We'll see you guys on
Father's Day, everybody who hears.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. By the way, we're not having a Den meeting this Sunday for Father's Day, so enjoy your Father's Day. Right?
Cool, I'm off. Free.
Yeah, you're right. All right. We love you guys. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you again next week on another episode of Just Two Dads. Thanks.